the context of this meeting, and welcome everybody, and thank you for coming, and we'll just let other people come in as they might. You know, when we have a small committee behind this community, and when we heard about the merger, we thought it would make, you know, we were talking amongst ourselves about, you know, well, what does this mean? And we finally just said, you know, why don't we just bring everybody together? I mean, we've attracted a nice group of people over the years, and so let's just have a conversation. So that's the point of our program today. The agenda is, you know, really quickly, I just thought I'd give background on our community, then just share a statement from the IIRC CEO about the merger. And then because we had a lot of people sign up, like 60 or more, and you never know who's going to show up, but I decided that it made sense to do breakout sessions. So we're going to break it into two sections today, and one is going to talk about what does the merger mean for the integrated movement, and then what does that mean for us as a community? How should we face this challenge, or this change rather? So just background for those of you who don't know kind of the details. You know, I started this in association with Bob Lux when he was at the IIRC. Bob and I have known each other for a long time from the intellectual capital and tangible capital community. And I knew that a lot of what was happening with the IIRC was kind of a top-down effort, as you must have in something like this. But there wasn't much at the grassroots level, and there was no web presence for the movement in the US. And so we just created a little website and started inviting people. We never got more formal than that. At one point, the IIRC started paying the monthly bill for our platform, which isn't a big amount of money. But other than that, we were, I don't even want to use the word sanctioned. They knew we were doing this, they blessed it, but we were never part of them. So they never had say over what we were doing and never really gave us support, which, you know, that's okay, but that's the way it was. I won't read all the names, but you can see we have a great committee that have been participating, and you know, our goal as a committee really coming into 2020 was to try and really goose things up, get some member profiles on the website, kind of do more. But we all, you know, this 2020, this was one of the things that kind of fell by the wayside for a lot of us, me included. I was not a good catalyst to keep this going. We did have a discussion about the framework sometime last summer and gave a lot of good feedback on it to the IIRC, but we haven't had a program since then. Nevertheless, we did do quite a few programs over the years. I counted 30 on our website, and a lot of the videos from those programs are on YouTube. So we've done a good job of kind of getting the word out, but you know, life changes, and you know, now we're moving forward to this new world, and as we all know, there have been so many efforts. I mean, this has been a time of huge innovation in reporting, and specifically, but you know, just thinking about value creation in companies. And so, you know, the IIRC moved to this merger with SASB, and we won't bother explaining that specifically to everybody, because I think people know. If you have questions, you know, I hopefully we can answer them in the breakout groups. But you know, the idea now is that they're moving towards this, you know, what he says in the bottom here, comprehensive value creation, and, you know, simplicity in the corporate reporting world. So with that, I have a couple polls that I thought, we did polls last time and it worked pretty well. So this is anonymous, so nobody's going to keep track of who you are, but I'd love to just take the pulse of everybody here and see what people have to say. Okay. So 64% say positive, 20% mixed feelings, and 16% unsure. Well, I think that's an interesting foundation as we go into these breakout discussions. So I think it still makes sense with to do breakouts. Right now we're about 20 something people, but what do you think? Does it make sense to go into smaller groups, or would you want to just keep it in one big room?
You won't be able to keep the recording, Mary, if it goes into breakout rooms.
You do lose the recording if you go to breakouts. That's true. We do plan to, we do plan to have people report out from the groups, and then keep a copy of the chat. And we did use the chat last time quite effectively. We got a ton of comments from people in the chat, so I welcome. But anybody have any objections to trying the breakouts instead of just doing one big discussion?
I think with 30, we're at that kind of critical point, aren't we? This is the absolute maximum perhaps one could usefully have in one group.
Yeah, and we still have, I don't know, we still have, let's try it for the first time, and maybe the second discussion we can move to an open discussion.
Yeah, we may get more join.
Yeah. So I'm going to do, so groups of, I'll do 6 groups, I think. So it's so that they're small enough that you can talk. And we'll take about 15 minutes. And then I ask, please, that you have the people, that you each group choose somebody who's going to speak for you. And then after the time is up, that then we'll come back and we'll hear the main points from each group. And if you weren't in the consensus for your group, feel free to share in the chat. But we really want to lay everything out on the table and figure out, you know, what people are thinking and where we go from here. So so you'll have 15 minutes, a 60-second warning at the end, and then we'll come back and see what people say. So thank you, and I look forward to hearing what everybody has to say.
Sure, this is Bob. I can start.
Great, thanks, Bob.
Sure. So, and I'm not sure we had a consensus of any kind. Just go over some of the points that we made. One of the points was it's favorable. It's better that things are getting condensed. So it's good that these organizations are condensing down. And that was another positive is maybe SASB and the recognition of SASB or the knowledge of people that have of SASB in the U.S. would be a positive to the integrated reporting movement. Maybe a negative is, would that mean even less of a multi-capital approach where there'd be even more focus on environmental and social, and maybe when the human capital space, the social aspect of human capital versus other aspects of it, and maybe even less focus on intellectual capital would be could be a negative. Point was made that SASB is kind of a quantitative approach. So what does that mean to the qualitative approach of integrated reporting? And within that qualitative approach, the value creation story, which is central to integrated reporting. And point was made that that value creation story is one of the great aspects of integrated reporting, and maybe even more beneficial to the company of them thinking about how they create value. It's good that the new organization's name has value in it, I think, in its title. And point was made, one of the big things about value creation, again, kind of reiterating, is this intellectual capital. One person indicated they think that's the most important aspect of value creation, and maybe that will get even less attention in this merged entity. So that was kind of a summarization of our discussion. anyone can feel free from our group to chime in if they'd like. That's all I had, Mary.
Well, that's great, Bob. That was actually framed the things really well, but I'd love to hear from the other groups. If you're the spokesperson, just unmute yourself.
I'm happy to go next. I just scribbled down notes, so let me just quickly pull those up. So I think, so there were 5 people in our group. I think it was actually overwhelmingly a positive response. Some saw that the proposed merger is long overdue, and that it's outstanding for global traction, in terms of improved reporting and sort of the scope of what's being reported on. And so this helps to support both initiatives. We've had silos for far too long, which are counterproductive. And so we do need to have one voice to support these initiatives. And so I quote, "I was caught by surprise, but by pleasant surprise." The consensus was that this is useful and beneficial for the multi-capital approach. It will also have greater impact on the investor community, put some pressure on investors, and allow for better engagement between investors and their portfolio companies. We recognize that there are differences. Bob already cited one big one, which is the sort of the quantitative versus the conceptual and qualitative side of things, but we recognize these as actually being complementarities to bring together the quantified approach and qualitative approaches. Another difference, but complementarity, is that is in terms of global coverage. So whereas the IRC has quite a footprint and following in places like Asia, Africa, Europe, SASB might have less so. But if we flip to the other side of the coin, the IRC has not made the inroads that it would like to have made in the North American market. And this is where SASB does have quite a visible presence. And so we're hopeful that again, will help both organizations. It was recognized that there's a potential, and Bob sort of hinted at this as well, for a stronger sustainability angle. So there are some pros and some cons to that. So I guess that would be the only point of maybe uncertainty or caution in the remarks. Finally, from a macro ESG perspective or top-down approach, the arrangement will hopefully offer some benefits where sort of improved enterprise level awareness and improvement will roll up to sort of the macro community and country and the macro level and so forth. So I think that kind of captures everything. Unless it doesn't, in which case, please speak up, folks.
Great, cool. Okay, thanks, Lisa. And another spokesperson or anybody want to chime in?
I'll weigh in for our group. We had Jenny, Rin, David Schreibner, Laura Queen, and Alan Olfano. And some of the things that we talked about was the opportunity that this presents for developing the global standards and assurances in a way that could create this traction that Lisa and Bob mentioned. At the same time, there seems not a way to guarantee the numbers that people are reporting. So a couple of people shared examples where data coming out of China was kind of questionable compared to the scope of a same enterprise in the US. And so, if you don't have the assurances behind it, what does the data really mean? We also talked about that in terms, for example, of workplace safety, until you can come up with definitions and measures that everybody is using the same, then the numbers are not necessarily that meaningful. We too talked about the qualitative versus quantitative kind of tension and the idea to create this, or the opportunity to create this systemic perspective, and for the usefulness of the measures for informing management and creating more effective practices for value creation. Let's see, and then, what's hard to measure often gets ignored. And so things like the intellectual capital, and so does that mean it doesn't help? And what could this group do to help elevate those, underappreciated assets? Anybody else want to weigh in from the group?
Great. Oh, Laura, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I thought Elizabeth did a great job at summarizing our contributions.
Good, thanks. Another group, Tammy?
Yeah. Well, what we did, we had a group of 5 of us, and I kind of sidetracked the conversation based upon a really good webinar I heard yesterday it was organized by the Impact Management Project, and the title was Progress Towards a Comprehensive Corporate Reporting System. It's a webinar with leading sustainability and integrated reporting organizations. That was CDP, CDSB, GRI, IIRC, and SASB. So Charles Tilley was on it, and as well as Janine Glow and all of the other, organizations representatives. It was quite good and interesting. What you've just all reported out as some of the very same, and I see somebody saying, was that recorded? Yes, it was. And I don't know how I'm going to get notified of the recording, but I would go to impactmanagementproject.com to look for it. However, it did major emphasis on harmonization, as this has already been reported here. The having a consistency and harmonization in the terms and definitions is critical. And so where with the SASB and the IIRC, the IR framework, the human capital, those don't match quite right. And so as the GRI spokesperson indicated, we're looking that GRI has 3 dimensions, SASB has 5, and then IR has 6 capitals. So, and TCFD has 4 pillars. So what the group of 5 is looking at is how do we map those together? How do we erase the barriers to being able to utilize these in a more harmonized way? And really great material. They focused on some of the big issues too around materiality, the definition that you use in materiality. So the end result of our little conversation was let's make sure we can get that recording and the slides, because they were quite good, some good graphics. And I'm sure both the IRC and the SASB should have that recording available as well, because it does help you peel back the layers and figure out how are they the same, how are they different, and what is the work that they have going forward to gain harmonization. And one of our group members had indicated, just so we get this together so we know which road to follow, rather than all of these convoluted pathways that are out there at the moment.
Thank you, Tammy. And if you do get a link or have that information, if you get it to me, through the website, or just, I can give you my email, then you just,
do that.
I'm happy to distribute it to people.
Yeah, because I think it's of real value to see what the group of 5 are doing and the progress they're making. And one very interesting comment was one of the listeners asked about, well, what about IFRS? Is that going to restart everything? Is that a different road they're going on? And I believe it was Janine Guillot indicated that we are working full steam ahead. And in fact, we want to bring in more partners to this so that whenever IFRS figures out, number one, the 600 comments they got to their exposure document, what does it say? What should we do? And then if they choose a path that we're all ready and got a lot of this figured out to help them work, more productively, so that we don't erase all the progress that's been made.
Got it. Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, all that information. I think we should have at least one group left. Maybe not. I thought I was counting.
Mary, that might be our group. This is Bob Hirth. So I think, there was generally a positive view of the bringing together 2 organizations that, we need to converge all of this. I think there's also the question, and some of those weren't raised in detail, but so, the devil's in the details. So how does the meter move as a result of doing this? There was also kind of a question of, so where does it leave GRI in the model? That's a question, not a statement. There was some, just general head scratching about, so what's the funding going to be and how do you ensure that that's right? You know, some people have talked about IFRS. I made the comment, remember, IFRS is in 144 jurisdictions, but there's also one other jurisdiction that doesn't use IFRS. So you have to, you know, not to muddy the water, but there's the US GAAP SEC, not versus, but and IFRS. So that will all be interesting. And, you know, I'm just a big believer. So full disclosure, I'm on the SASB standard setting board. You know, you've got to, there's a lot of great discussion about sustainability and all what we think, but you got to bring the companies in who I call the victims. You know, you're asking them or thinking you can tell them what to report. You can't do that. We got to get them on board and in it. And then ultimately, if you go to our financial side of the model with third-party assurance, you can't tell the assurers what to do at the end of the day. So you got to bring them in, which I think is all kind of going to occur on the IFRS side. So those were a couple things we had. And just from a SASB perspective and the webinar yesterday, I know the standards board discussion has been that it's pretty logical that IIRC is a framework without detailed standards and the SASB is detailed standards without maybe a correct overall framework. So I think that the SASB standard setting board discussion was quite positive about what Tammy said on reconciling the 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever you have, but that the 6 capitals with this merger could or would likely form the foundational, you know, basis rather than the 5 what we call general issue categories. So I think there's, you know, a lot of openness and a wide open eyes and ears to how do we make the merger be meaningful.
Cool. Anyone else? Thank you very much, Bob. Anyone else have any comments? I think that was actually an interesting segue for us to then say, you know, what's our place in this process? You know, one of the things that we did with our community was highlight the really varied approaches companies were taking to integration and celebrate that and say that, you know, that's how innovation happens. That's the, I won't call it opposite, but it's very different from the idea of creating standards. Neither is, I'm not saying either is wrong or right. It's just, it was a very different approach. And, you know, personally, I didn't participate in the discussions just because the way I've been facilitating it, but, you know, my interest has always been in the internalities, how the capitals are put to work internally for value creation. So let's just go, and if I may, just to keep us on track, to our second poll, which is about our community. So basically would love to hear what you have to say, and please be honest. It's anonymous. Have we outlived our usefulness? Did we do our job? What is, you know, is there a role for us? Mixed feelings, unsure. Okay, so basically 63% said there is a role for our community going forward. Some have mixed feelings and some are unsure. It's mostly unsure or there is a role. So the question is, what is that role and what should we be doing? And of course, these are early days. I know it's it's just been announced, you know, not that long ago. But I think we've really, the operating committee have been kind of struggling with this question. What should we be doing? I mean, we can just sit and wait and, you know, hope somebody taps us on the shoulder, but none of us are kind of the, oh, I'm sorry, I thought I stopped sharing. None of us are kind of the types to just sit and watch. So I think I'll just make an executive decision. We have 15 minutes left. We won't do the breakouts, but I'd really love to hear from you because, you know, ultimately, this is something Bob and I created. When you get to the point where we are with a lot of people on your list and, you know, a lot of different stakeholders, it doesn't really belong to us. It belongs to everybody here. So what is it that we as a group should be doing, and how would we, you know, how would we do that? And who would do it? As we move towards SASB, it's getting farther and farther away from my area of expertise and focus, which is, again, isn't a bad thing. It's just, that's not where I've been spending my time. So I'd love to hear some thoughts. Bob, did you unmute?
Yeah, Mary, let me just say that the SASB philosophy certainly has been, you know, the more information, the better. We may not agree with it. We may not take it in. We may not act on it. So I think we've got a pretty open culture about your contacting SASB and providing a viewpoint. You know, that could be done as each of you for individuals, but it's probably more effective when it's a group of people that represent sort of an organized constituency or a consistent constituency and community. So I guess in some respects, I'd urge all of you to think about what you can observe. Maybe you might wait a little bit and observe, but you certainly could put out, you know, some viewpoints of some key things you want to know about. So I think we've always felt we've been the meat in the sandwich, that we want to listen to the investors and the users of the information. And then also we want to, you know, work to those who have to provide the information, and then do our own third-party research. And at some point, put the stake in the ground and come to a conclusion that may not make everybody happy. So I just urge you to continue to think about the voice you can have. And I did vote that I think the community has a role to play. You have to think about, you know, not all communities may at the end of the day be equal in terms of how they're heard or what they see. But I just encourage you to think about how do you keep your dialogue moving.
Great, thank you, Bob. Anyone else?
This is Lisa. I'm happy to I typed down what Elizabeth said in her summary, because I actually see this as being extremely important, helping to elevate the underappreciated elements. And it also harkens back to what Bob said. There's probably some concern that certain capitals will go overlooked, whether it's sort of the strategic side of manufactured capital or whether it's intellectual capital. And so I think that being a voice for those underrepresented capitals is probably more important than ever. So that's just my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo the same reservations from my side. I think the intellectual human capital dimension going forward, I kind of foresee some risk of it falling by the wayside in some respects, vis-a-vis, for example, emphasis on climate. Somebody did say that SASB does have a human capital working group. I'm not sure how active or influential that group is, but clearly that group, together with us, might be able to forge together a slightly stronger human capital component within the combined body.
Paul, I'll jump in on the human capital component. They're in the middle right now of public comment on their initial framework. So they're actively looking for people to participate both as subject matter experts and investors in this community. I've been spending time peripherally talking with them, and they seem to be really active and very interested in making sure that the human capital component of all of this work is being brought to the forefront.
And Paul, not waiting at SASB, we have issued some interim guidance. One of the things that came up is when the US SEC issued their change, many companies said, what does this mean to me? What might I report? So you could look at that interim paper, you know, that's already out there. The other thing that we did, I think maybe in the research that we did, but actually quite a high percentage of the individual SASB standards, as you look across the different industries, are related to human capital. So at least there's a view, if you slice it that way, there's quite a good focus. So, and I would say that we at the standard setting board level absolutely believe in the importance of human capital and the value that it creates or destroys if you don't do it right. So hopefully that will help you a little bit.
Anyone else? I mean, you know, what we've done, our approach really as a community has been shine a light on what people are doing. Yeah, that's basically it. Getting together, people sharing their experiences. Is that really, you know, I feel like SASB has a lot of momentum, a lot more resources. This combined entity will have all of those things. Does it make sense for us to have a separate entity doing, we're not an entity, a separate group doing that? Or does it make sense, you know, not making a decision today, but to maybe just become part of the solution, be part of the processes that are going to be in place as the two organizations and maybe others come together?
If I may, Mary, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Vânia Borghet I'm a IIRC council member. Great to see you here, Lisa and Paul. Miss you too much. I'm the head of the Brazilian network, which is the mirror for your US community. And we are very positive about the creation of the Value Reporting Foundation. We think it's very good that the institutions that are dedicated for sustainability report comes together in order to get stronger and have a louder voice to work on that. So here in Brazil, we do not anticipate any kind of change in what we've been doing, which is keeping the Brazilian market update about integrated reporting, about sustainability reporting, putting the companies and the market together. We have recently have the introduction of IIRC framework for our Securities and Exchange Commission. So we are working on that. So I understand that you are at US, you keep a role to be played even after the merger is set by June, as I understand. So hopefully we'll be able to get together. Maybe we can exchange some initiatives and work together in order to be stronger as well. So I think that SASB and IIRC are just the two first entities to come together in the foundation. Hopefully others will join them. And with the IFRS initiative, it will be very good to have a strong and educated people for deal with sustainability aspect to help them, because they have the due process, but they do not have the expertise in sustainability. I think they will need everyone who is willing to help.
Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us, Vânia. Thank you for sharing. Cool. Other comments about our role? You know, if we continue doing what we're doing, we're going to want more people to get involved. Bob?
Yeah, Mary, you know, you mentioned the word materiality, so I just want to bring people, if you look at the IFRS consultation paper, there is a section on materiality, and there's a view that we need to kind of converge the definition for both parties. So I just leave you with the ability to go look at that. But the idea here is the first two words of the definition are if omitted. So think about, so if omitted, would that make a difference? So that's kind of an interesting way to put, it's a way to keep people, you know, to warn them that, you know, if omitted, you know, would you do so just might take a look at that. But I think the idea would be that that definition, the words used would be similar to words we'd use for materiality in a way over on the, you know, I'll call it the other side, but the ESG sustainability side of things.
Great, thank you.
Jill has her hand raised, Mary.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that. Jill, please. Yes.
Yes, hi. I'm Jill Austin from the Institute of Internal Auditors, and I'm new to the group, but I wanted to congratulate you for building this network, and you know, the fact that you know, it's a little maybe uncertain time. I wouldn't disband, because I feel like anytime you can have a group of dedicated, interested people on a subject, there is value, and perhaps, you know, you could even assist going forward in the merger for issues that might need almost like a focus group, or you know, some sort of vetting of ideas, and you could help with that. You would say, oh, I've got a group that cares about this subject, let me see what they think. So I would you know, congratulate you, like I said, for this, and it's certainly an advocacy. It's a huge value to have this kind of group. So anyways, that's just my thought.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Jill. Hope we see you. Glad to have you here. Anybody else?
And I just wanted to say, you know, to me, I think it's very important to continue at least for another year to see how things shake out. But that the connectivity in the integrative thinking doesn't get lost. That's, you know, somebody talked about how IIRC provides a systematic framework to help people make sense. And I think that is a role that we need to keep in the forefront.
Right. Yeah, the connectivity is the part that, and the, you know, the internal aspect of the capitals, I think, is so critical that we find a way on. Bahar. Did you raise your hand, Bahar?
Yes, sorry, just had to unmute there. Bob, in our session, had a very good point. He reminded us that in all of this, the victims are the companies. So I just would like us also in our community to make sure we keep looking out for the companies. They're the ones that are struggling with all of this, and they're the ones, I think, that need the most out of the changes we're talking about.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. No, and that's certainly what we've tried to do is to shine a light on the solutions that people are coming up with. So, cool. Anybody else?
Mary, this is Nikki here. I just wanted to express my support for the work that we've done and for the leadership that you and Bob have demonstrated. And I feel that we should definitely keep plugging along, especially with college community, college and graduate schools, because I think that this foundation is very important for college students. Yeah. As they will graduate, and in these different times, this approach will help them be the leaders that we look to develop.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. Nikki joined us when he was in graduate school at Columbia, and he's out changing the world now. But thanks, Nikki.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'd be actually interested in hearing from Catherine Milburn. Catherine, I don't know if you could comment, but you know, the role of education and how this group could support that.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. My class has grown significantly over the last few years. I was trying to get my video going, but you know, right now I just kind of teach them everything in general, and it's been really challenging to do that. And every semester it seems like it changes as we go forward. So you know, I'm not sure you can help in this particular group, but it helps me just to be aware of what's going on, and I'm surprised at how much my students do know when they leave.
And there's a hunger for it, I guess. Rob, what do you think about it? Because she's at Sacramento State. I'm just curious.
I'm on that tenure track where I'm sort of struggling to stay abreast of publications at the moment, but it was only the other day that I broached that. Of doing some sort of certificate level course in sustainability reporting. But again, it's what do you bring in, how quickly it changes, and how do we do this? So I'm still in those early stages of that one. But I'd love to talk to you more on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you could almost make the case that the integrated model is like a theoretical foundation and that helps explain how it all fits together. Yeah, interesting. Anybody else have anything? I'm just looking, if you want to unmute, raise your hand. All right, well, I think this was certainly helpful to me. I hope to many of you. You know, the conversation will continue and the journey continues, right? That's something we've always emphasized. I think we have to regroup with the people who are on our committee, but the one thing I would ask is if you think you're at all interested in just helping organize one program or get us connected with somebody, that it would be great to hear from you. And you can send it through the chat. I sent my email and is in the chat as well. You know, I think we all do this as our work, but we all have an element of why, you know, we do it because we believe in it and want to change the world just a little bit. So hopefully we can find a way to keep doing that. And I thank all of you, and please, you know, like I said, just even if it's just a little bit, this is just a grassroots thing. And especially now when everybody has so many things on our plates, if we can get, you know, all pitch in just a little bit to keep things going, I'd really, you know, it'd be appreciated by all of us. So any last words, anybody?
Mary, this is Bob. Just to remind everybody that the SASB Standard Setting Board agenda is on the website. So it shows you all of the things that we're working on, which will include some revisions to standards and some new standards. And that there is a portion devoted to a day where our board meeting is public. So you're able to listen in. So just want to be sure we knew about that.
Great, thanks. Cool. Anyone else?
Hi, Tammy White here. Just to add a note, I know I see some notes here about that webinar I referred to. You can go to YouTube and type in Impact Management Project, and the first video that comes up was yesterday's webinar.
Oh,
and I think, yeah, so you should be able to find it pretty easy, and there's some other notes that folks have added. So enjoy.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, thanks to everybody. Really appreciate you taking the time, and it's nice to connect with everybody. And we'll keep moving on the journey, as we said. And so stay tuned, but please let us hear from you with ideas and specific suggestions as well. So